Looking back, my biggest high school regret isn't something dramatic, like missing out on prom or flunking a class. It's this one moment, this one decision that stuck with me. I had a chance to join the school newspaper in my sophomore year, and I didn't take it. At the time, it seemed like such a small thing, just another club, another meeting after school. But now, years later, it feels like a pivotal moment, a fork in the road I didn't even realize I was standing at. This regret stays with me because it's not just about the newspaper. It's about what it represented, a chance to step out of my comfort zone, to find my voice, to take a risk. And instead, I let my fear of not being good enough hold me back. So let's talk about what happened, what I've learned, and how I've tried to move forward. It was the first week of sophomore year. The school newspaper advisor, Mrs. Torres, stood in front of our English class and announced that they were looking for new writers. She was charismatic, the kind of teacher who made you feel like you could do anything if you just tried. She talked about how the paper wasn't just about reporting. It was about storytelling, about giving students a platform to share their perspectives. Something about it sparked my interest. I loved writing. I had a notebook full of half-finished stories and poems no one had ever seen. But as I sat there, the doubts crept in. What if my writing wasn't good enough? What if I embarrassed myself in front of everyone? By the time the bell rang, I had convinced myself it wasn't worth the risk. The opportunity came and went. I watched as classmates I barely knew joined the paper and flourished. They wrote articles that got published, interviewed teachers and students, and even got to skip class sometimes for assignments, a bonus I didn't fully appreciate back then. I can't help but think about how different things might have been if I had just raised my hand that day. There's one memory that sticks out more than the others. It was a crisp October afternoon, and the school paper's latest issue had just come out. I picked up a copy, curious to see what my peers had written. There, on the second page, was a feature article about the annual fall carnival. It wasn't just a report. It was a beautifully written piece that captured the excitement and chaos of the event. As I read, I felt this ache in my chest. It wasn't jealousy. It was longing. I wanted to be part of something like that, to create something that mattered. But instead of inspiring me to take action, it just deepened my sense of inadequacy. The potential consequences of taking that chance feel bittersweet now. On one hand, I could have faced rejection or criticism, but on the other, I might have found a passion sooner, made friends I didn't know I needed, or gained confidence I desperately lacked. It's the what-ifs that haunt me the most. And even now, there's this pang of regret when I think about the life I might have lived if I had just been brave enough to try. Here's the thing about regret. It's like a teacher you didn't ask for, but desperately need. Missing out on the newspaper taught me something crucial about myself. I realized how often I let fear make decisions for me. It's not that I didn't want to take risks. I was just so scared of failing that I'd convince myself the risks weren't worth it. But life doesn't wait for you to feel ready. Opportunities come and go whether you're prepared or not. In hindsight, I've learned to stop waiting for certainty. High school taught me that growth only happens when you're uncomfortable. I've tried to carry that lesson with me. When I'm faced with a decision now, I ask myself, what's the worst that could happen? And 9 times out of 10, the answer isn't nearly as bad as the regret of doing nothing. This regret also shaped how I approach challenges today. It's why I've pushed myself to apply for jobs I felt unqualified for, to join clubs in college where I didn't know anyone, and even to share my writing online, where strangers could see it. Missing out on that one opportunity made me realize I don't want to live a life defined by what-ifs. Sometimes I think about how I'd handle that moment differently now. I'd tell my younger self to take the leap, to trust that even if it didn't work out perfectly, it would be worth it. And maybe that's the biggest lesson of all. Mistakes and regrets don't mean failure. They mean you're trying, and trying is what leads to growth. Letting go of regret isn't easy, but it's necessary. I've learned to reframe my regrets as lessons instead of failures. Instead of dwelling on what I missed out on, I try to focus on what I gained: awareness, resilience, and a clearer sense of who I want to be. One strategy that's helped me is journaling. Whenever I feel stuck in the past, I write about it. Seeing my thoughts on paper helps me process them and put them into perspective. Another thing that's been helpful is talking to people. Regret feels less heavy when you share it. You realize you're not alone. Everyone has moments they wish they could redo. If you're struggling with regret, my advice is simple: forgive yourself. You're not the same person you were back then, and that's a good thing. Use your regrets as fuel to do better, to take chances, to live more boldly. And remember, it's never too late to start something new. The school newspaper might not be an option anymore, but there are always new opportunities waiting to be seized. Sometimes I remind myself that life is like a book. Missing a chapter doesn't mean the story's over. You can always write the next one differently. That's the beauty of it. Regret isn't the end, it's just a plot twist. If there's one thing I've learned from this experience, it's that regret doesn't have to define you. It can teach you, guide you, and push you toward growth. My biggest takeaway? The things we're most scared of are often the things most worth doing. So, I challenge you. Think about your own high school regrets. What's one thing you wish you had done differently? And more importantly, what can you do now to make sure you don't have the same regrets in the future? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your stories, and maybe, together, we can all learn to let go of the past and embrace the opportunities ahead.